Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Pastor Pierre here. I just want to encourage you with this. I always say that sometimes silence is really the only answer that should be given. And I believe that for the life of the believer, one of the things that we have to always use is discernment. The Bible says, in speaking about the sons of Issachar, that they were wise because they were able to discern the time. So discernment for us is actually a strategy. And even when it comes to daily conversation and communication with others, that we have to use discernment and know when to operate from that place of silence. So we have to understand that sometimes we find ourselves in situations where people want to argue, or it seems like there will be no outcome, no good outcome at the end of a conversation. We've got to understand that silence is the best answer, because really silence is the only thing that cannot be misquoted. And your silence does not necessarily mean that you have nothing to say or nothing to add to the conversation or to the matter at hand, but silence means that I have something to say, but I'm also operating from that place of discernment and wisdom that says that I know that right now is not the appropriate time to say it. So when we find ourselves in a place or a position where it seems like it's going downhill, like there is no outcome, that if we go to war there will be no prize, we really have to use discernment, because discernment will be the thing and the strategy that shows you those things. It's not a matter of you being too good to have a conversation with someone, or it's not a matter of you just sitting back and not operating as a believer and using your authority to speak over a situation, really to just diminish all arguments. But sometimes you have to know that there are people who like to argue. Perhaps they are your critics, and I always say that sometimes we have to operate from that place where we don't always respond to our critics, because there will be people who will never agree with you and who really just want to kill your peace. I call them peace destroyers, and oftentimes those peace destroyers have come to kill and destroy the dream of living the life that God has for you. Jesus says that I've come that you might have life and have it so that you will experience things that you've never even dreamed of. Proverbs chapter 26, it actually goes to say, from the New Living Translation, it says, don't answer the foolish arguments of fools, or you yourself will become as foolish as they are. And over in Proverbs 23, it says that, don't even give attention, or don't fall into the trap of really arguing with a fool or having foolish conversations with them, because all they'll do is twist around your words. So we have to understand and use that discernment, that strategy of discernment, to know when we're going to war where there is no prize, and if we are arguing with someone who really just wants to get us riled up and destroy our peace. Titus chapter 3, I believe, it tells us that we are to avoid arguments. So we have to operate from that place and know that yes, sometimes silence is the only answer. I've talked to many people about this in recent past, and and they've even asked the question, well, as believers, we're supposed to speak, we're supposed to address things and really speak the truth in love. Yes, that is all good, and we understand the power behind that. I call them secondhand words, that we know how people have gotten sick because of secondhand smoke. That's why you can't smoke in restaurants and in certain places. In some areas you cannot even smoke within 50 feet of an entrance to a building. Yes, we are to use our words and use our authority to do things. In Numbers chapter 30, it talks about how if a daughter makes a vow, and if the father doesn't agree with that vow, if he doesn't say anything, then now she is obligated to that vow. But if he speaks, then she is released from that. And it goes on a little further in Numbers 30 to talk the same thing about husband and wife. And yes, we have got to operate from that place where yes, we're not going to argue with fools or have foolish conversation, because we know that they'll just twist around our words. We're not going to go to war where there is no prize. But yes, we've also got to understand that the Bible says that there is power, that the power of life and death, Proverbs 18, it's in our tongue. So we have the ability to speak life or speak death. So it's all about understanding the balance in our communication. Our communication and our words carry a weight. It carries the weight of expectation in what either God has said or what the enemy is trying to bring towards us. So yes, when we are in times where things are being said, those secondhand words, you may not have said them yourself, they may not have necessarily been said about you, but perhaps perhaps someone's talking about themselves. Those secondhand words, if we do not speak and if we do not address those things, that those people will be bound by those words. And not only them, but there are times that people say things to us, about what we're perhaps going through, and we just accept those things. There was a time where we used to call things that be not as though they were, and we would have an expectation of faith based on what God has said about us. There were times that we used to say things like, well, you know what, the devil is a liar. I don't accept those words over my life. And if you've had an experience where you go to the doctor's asking you how you feel, you say, wow, well, I'm feeling fine, everything is okay. But then all of a sudden they tell you what they have noticed or what they have found, perhaps in some tests that they have done, and then all of a sudden you start feeling those symptoms. And that is because we have accepted some words that have been spoken over us, and those secondhand words have the ability to cause us to lose our peace, cause us to be sick, and really will send us to the grave. But no, we have to speak words over our situations and understand that our words have life. The Bible says in John 10:10 that the enemy comes only to steal, to kill, and to destroy. And one of the ways that I believe the enemy destroys and steals and kills is based on those secondhand words where we allow to be in our environment, and really through the words that we speak. So we have to understand the balance between remaining silent and just praying, and then knowing when to actually step up and say something. If you are going to be in a place where your critics or people just want to argue with you, well, perhaps it's just time for you to operate with that strategic plan. And that strategic plan or that strategic tool is discernment. And you say, okay, you know what? Right now, my only thing to do is to remain silent, is to avoid this argument, and really to seek God. And that is what the Bible says, that we are to avoid arguments. Yes, the power of life and death is in our tongue, but sometimes if we are going to be in a situation that is only going to cause for the enemy to be glorified, the circumstances or the situation can go down south. Listen, remain silent. We have a right to be silent, and we also have a right to open up our mouths. And we've got to get to that point where we understand the balance between the two. We got to understand the balance between knowing when to speak and when to be silent, when to open up our mouths and now speak life into a circumstance and really to correct in love, and then other times just knowing when to just say, okay, God, the only thing left to do right now is just pray, because in this situation, the enemy will now be glorified and it can go somewhere where it does not need to go. So I encourage you to not be passive with your words. Yes, there are times that we are to be silent, and that is the only answer, to just watch and pray. But we ought not to be passive with the words that we allow to be in our environment. The word passive means accepting or allowing what someone has said or what someone has done without any response or any action. And we've got to get to that place where, yes, there are seasons and there are times that we should be quiet, times that we should speak, and we have got to use that tool of discernment to understand that if words are being spoken in our environment, that we ought to not just be passive and let those things have power, but we ought to use the tools that God has given us through the power of our tongue, which can speak life or speak death, and speak up and say, you know what, the devil is a liar. I will live and not die. You will live and not die. And then say, you know what, I'm not going to allow certain things to be spoken in my environment, and I'm not going to allow you to be in my presence and speak those things over you, because I'm operating out of a place of love. And because I love you so much, I'm going to now issue a decree over those words that the enemy has allowed you to speak that do not glorify God or what he's doing. So yes, understand there are times where silence is the only answer, but discernment will teach you the strategy and will show you when the appropriate time is to speak or not to speak. So operate from that place of glory, operate from that place of strategy, knowing that you are wise because you are able to discern what is appropriate at certain times and what is not. And God will teach you those things. If you abide in him and he abide in you, that you will bear much fruit even in the area of your communication. God bless you and have a wonderful week.